and the power of power. So I've got Landon, Eric, and Ryan. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
That's from memory.
Oh, good.
Cool. All right. I get a prize. Maybe I can put in for the prize. And they're going to go through a presentation for you, and they'll answer your questions at the end. So enjoy.
All right. Well, thanks for having us. As Chief said, my name's Landon Myers, and I am the Community Relations Coordinator for Tillamook PUD. Been there about 7 years. We have Joanna Stelzig. She's our PR manager at Tillamook PUD. She's in the back there. Ryan Goebel, he's journeyman lineman, and Eric Carver, apprentice lineman. And so this is just our demonstration table we take around the community. We go to the fire departments because we work hand in hand with the fire departments, emergency services. We take it to the fair every year. We go to the schools, show the kids. Just kind of a real simple thing to give people an idea how electricity works, how to be safe around electricity. And it's a super informal presentation. So as these guys are going, if while you're watching something you have a question, just answer it or ask it, and they'll be happy to answer it. With that, I'll turn it over to these guys. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, like Landon said, this table here is just a demonstration on, it's mainly electrical safety is what it's about, not so much like knowledge of electricity, but electrical safety, something to, you get so used to looking at power lines all the time, they're everywhere, and you get, lax on, they're just everywhere, and you don't really think much of it. But this is to just be a reminder of if, and we can give certain situations and scenarios, and if you come up with something, like Landon said, if you have questions, ask, and we'll try to set it up here and give you an idea of how it can work sometimes. And also, electricity is, it's not always, it doesn't always act the same. It acts differently in different weather, fog, rain, dry, different weathers, it can act completely different. And I've been around it for, I think I've worked at the PUD for 17 years, and I've seen things happen when they shouldn't, and other times you think, well, that should, flash over, and it doesn't. It's just odd how it acts. So when we're working around it and with it, we take all precautions every time to, work it safely, ground it anytime we have to touch it, and we don't cut any corners. And this is kind of a thing to where you can see a power line laying on the ground sometimes, and we'll go over the different power lines that are not only in our community but anywhere in the world, really. I mean, that's another thing. Electricity it's the same here as it is in Mexico or Japan or anywhere. It's all the same theory. So, but yes, we have so many different kinds of power lines. One could be laying on the ground. Hard to tell that it's even a power line, laying there doing absolutely nothing. Like a lot of people have seen the commercials where it's laying on the ground and wiggling around and sparking, and sometimes it is actually kind of doing that and throwing some sparks and whatever, and sometimes it's laying there doing absolutely nothing and it's energized. So this whole thing is just a kind of a demonstration to refresher to get it back in your head about power line safety. And like Landon says, we do it with police departments, fire departments, schools, Have
it at the fair for everybody.
Yep. Anyhow, I guess we'll just kind of start and work our way across with like general things, which like getting up on your roof. We have this like antenna that could represent anything. If you're up on the roof moving ladders around, we've had actually in our community had accidents with ladders. People scaffolding, moving tall or long or whatever things around power lines. Actually energized is when that red light is on. But this just kind of shows that the arc of it. And you can kind of see it's hard to see maybe from the angle you're at, but this thing doesn't actually have to quite touch it, and that arc kind of jumps across. Anyhow, Same thing. Got a little gal flying a kite. Just everybody knows not to fly kites around power lines. Actually, we pull kites out of power lines every summer. It's not just summer, I guess, but seems like generally kite string isn't too conductive. But if it was, or if it was wet, it could do exactly that. This is probably a good one to show. So electricity it's always trying to get back to its source. So it's trying to go to ground to, say this is the substation. This, I believe, represents a substation, which is where the electricity comes from and comes down to feed your house. And all electricity is trying to get back to its source, and there's a whole lot of theory behind that, but that's what it's trying to do. So when you, say, bring something up into the power line that's conductive, if I can tip this just right, so we're all looking at the big arc up here, but if I can get this gal to tip right, what it's doing is it's traveling down through whatever is conductive, through the body and to the ground, and that's, yeah, so if I can get her to tip just right, I can get that arc to be down there. There you can kind of see.
Oh.
It's kind of tough with this. Well,
Now she's on fire.
yeah. Well, anyhow, that's what the electricity is doing, is going through the body, and that's what, ruins your organs and kills you.
It'll actually burn you on the inside. So
Yeah.
someone can be shocked on a high voltage shock, and you might not really see damage just by looking at it, but it actually burns on the inside and continues to burn.
Yeah, as we're like going through our training, the apprenticeship, they make you look at videos and pictures of a bunch of gory stuff, but they'll show you like the day the accident happened. It'll show, say maybe and some of them are just tiny little pinholes, say pinholes, in an arm or a hand, and then maybe they'll show the foot and there's a pinhole there, or a pinhole in a knee where the guy was like on the pole and that's where it went through him and in and out. And then that's day 1. Day 2, it doesn't look much different. Day 3, the arm might be getting really swollen and red. Day 4, they'll like have to slice the arm open, and then the pictures get completely gruesome of just burned up flesh on the inside. But it takes a few days, it seems, and it's a burn from the inside out, and it just sounds brutal. Yeah, there's a lot of cleaning and scraping and horrible.
Not good.
Not good.
We're not touching it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That's good.
Well, you didn't want to be part of it.
Yeah, there was actually an accident just up north in Manzanita a while back with a guy running a trowel for concrete, and he was on a high bank basically, and so like normally, the power lines are 40 feet in the air, not too much to worry about, but this house was like sat like over in this area on a high bank, and the power lines were pretty almost level with him, and he's running this long trowel, and he ended up hitting the lines, and it was on his shoulder, I believe. He hit the lines, and he had a little entrance wound and a little exit wound on his boot, or through his boot, through his foot, and the whole crew thought, no big deal, and he sat for a while, and I believe they held him to the hospital, I think that day. Anyhow, long and the short of it, he ended up losing, I think either at least his foot or his leg from the knee down. And they thought for, the whole day they thought, it's not that big a deal. And then the next day it was like, maybe it's a big deal. And then they ended up losing a leg over it. Yeah, it just progressively burns you from the inside out and gets worse. Let's see, where does this one come from here?
Is there anything that we can do as emergency responders to help alleviate if we see that might be the case? Obviously, we're looking to make sure there's no electrical connection around the person. But
if you think somebody has been electrocuted, I would say your best bet is obviously 911 and let them know that it was an electrical contact.
Okay.
And what they do with us or anybody that they know is an electrical contact, get them to the Oregon Burn Center. like ASAP. And we actually, luckily, have like one of the best burn centers in the country out in Portland. So they ship people from all over the Northwest, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, all come to Portland because supposedly it's a really good burn center.
The biggest part of that, if you find somebody that you think has been electrocuted, try to find the source, like without exposing yourself, because it could be a wire down in the grass. It could be a wire that is literally on a fence a half a mile down the road, and that can travel through. So when you're asking like things you can do to help, just keep people back until PUD can get on site. Even the fire departments and stuff, in a lot of situations, as hard as it is for them to stay back, they'll stay back until we can get there and make the area safe. Because by looking at something, like Ryan was saying, there is no way to tell if that's hot or not. So just keep people back, keep the area safe would probably be the best thing you guys could do.
Which moves us right into this scenario, which is a big one for the fire department. And sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Todd.
Todd, we were going over this with Todd before you guys showed up, as far as just exactly what Landon's talking about, car wrecks or whatever, power lines involved. People might be hurt in the car, but they're not, I mean, they're hurt, they're screaming, they want help, and there's power lines laying on the car, and these poor guys are there, first ones there, and they can't go in and do their job because you honestly can't tell, electricity. Yeah, you can see it when it's doing like the arc here, but if you look at the power lines out on the street, they're not doing anything, and you can get close to them and they're still not doing it. You can't hear anything, or there's no, you just can't tell if they're energized or not, which that made that little spark there. But this oh, that kind of came apart. But this represents basically a power line laying on it could, obviously it's a bus, but it could be a car, anything, a vehicle. Oh, I'm too close to that. So that power line, you can see the lights on, and it's laying on the bus, and it's energized. So essentially that entire bus is energized, but you can't hear anything or see anything, or you have no way to know if you were to walk up on a scene like that. And then if you get, of course you want to run up and help. And then that's where people get hurt, just trying to help people that are in there. And there's actually a really bad story about, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but it was I believe it was out in Portland, but there was a car wreck with a girl and her kid, and they were in the car and they were okay, and the boyfriend or something ran up to the car and he ended up dead, and then the dad.
It was last year.
Yeah, it was local,
pretty
right?
recent. It was out in Portland.
Yeah, and it was basically, there's a car wreck there, and people go up to help, and then that's where they ended up victims.
So my question, if you're in a car accident and the pole comes down and there's wires on you, you stay in the car.
Yes.
You wait for these guys.
Yeah,
Right,
stay
period.
put.
Yep.
Nobody, unless there's a fire in the
That's what, I'd say, short of the car being on fire, which is pretty rare, but say it is on fire, and you're going to either get out or burn up.
Right.
You need to get out.
Right.
But even that, there's ways to do that more safely than not. And what we were trained is best you can, say open the door and get on the edge and jump out and try to land both feet at the same time.
Yeah, try to not touch the ground and the car at the same time.
You're trying not to touch the ground in, like, when you're walking, you're touching the ground in two different spots, and that's the worst thing to do. You want to be either try to shuffle away or actually even hop, but keeping your feet in the same spot is, it's called a step potential thing. It's just how electricity works, but that's your best bet is to hop out of the car.
Okay.
And
you're not supposed to touch the metal handles, is that correct in the car?
Any part of the car, do not touch any part of the car and the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why he's saying if you absolutely have to,
Okay.
jump clear of the car
Right.
with both feet together.
But you know, the handles are metal
But
on
if
the
you're-
inside, how do you?
This is all theory, and like I say,
Right.
electricity acts different all the time, but in theory, the car is energized, and so you are essentially energized in the car.
Okay.
It's kind of like how a bird can come up and land on the power line. It's only touching just the power line and nothing else.
Got it.
So
Okay,
it can sit there
okay.
just fine. So you're basically like that bird on the power line. And if you were to, you just, jump out of the car, not touching the car and the ground at the same time, is your best bet. No guarantees.
So I noticed the bus is on its side, and I had been told that maybe if you're in a vehicle and it's up, and it's right up like it should be, that the rubber tires might
They-
help protect?
They can. They should
Is that
help. Yeah, and that's where sometimes you can run into a car sitting upright, and the car itself is energized, and the rubber tires are helping insulate the car from the ground.
For the people inside? Or,
Well,
no?
it's
Oh,
I mean, kind of. But also, your rubber tires have metal inside of them. A rubber tire is not a good insulator, but it can work as they can insulate. It's just not a great one. And that's where I get it's a touchy thing. You don't know.
hard to
Different places
explain.
you go run different voltages. Everything. There's so many factors to it that you can't have a definitive answer.
What do the wires look like when they're on the ground?
Well, that's a good point. We have a bunch of these wires that, and these are wires that are all in our system. This stuff comes out of our
Yeah, it
warehouse.
could be big, small, copper, aluminum. It just depends where you're at.
Yeah,
what
we
voltage
used
you're
to have
running.
a piece of like new copper, but like I think the worst one to see at night is this. Which another thing is, it doesn't make a difference if the power line's big or small. We run the same voltage in this line as we do in this one. And this is actually a mid-size one. We should get a piece of one in here it's up to about the size of this black piece, only it's all aluminum. But this is one of our most common ones. I would say that
and that.
this, and then this size-ish is, but they run the same voltage in all of them. We just use the bigger stuff like more in the cities because it's feeding more people. This stuff is, where there's more of this than this. This stuff is just, it's everywhere on every county road, either this or this size aluminum. And this stuff at night it's next to impossible
Yeah,
to see.
when it's new, it's more
It's
this
a shiny color.
easier to see.
Yeah, but after it's been up in the air, being a power line for a couple of years, it gets that green copper, which you can check it out if you want. Pass it around, but it's
So if you can imagine that, someone's been in a car wreck, so they're shook up, not thinking right anyways, that's possibly come down on the car.
that tiny little line could be laying on the car, and that
Hard to see.
Runs
Even
the-
at night, if we're working and we know it's there, it's still hard to see.
So that's another thing that when you're asking things you can do if you arrive on an accident scene, if you can stay back and encourage those people to stay in their vehicle, that's the safest for everybody.
So in Rockaway, almost all of our electrical lines are above ground. There are some areas like around the Donna Beach where they're buried. So like along 101 or maybe the power lines around up and down our streets, what particular wire would we have here? That one?
That one, other than right on 101, right on 101 is more like this stuff.
Okay.
But most of the streets off of 101, everything
Pretty
towards
much
the
everything.
beach is mostly that copper. It's either that or this, which I think all of that side of the highway is pretty much copper,
think
like
so.
that piece that was around that Joanna has.
Yep.
And some of a lot of the side streets over here are this, but that's about it. It's either this or that, unless you're right on. So 101 is like our main, just like the highway. We use it for a main feeder, and it goes between Tillamook to Manzanita. And all the offshoot stuff is pretty much this or this, other than our main feeders, which are the bigger ones.
And then the underground she was talking about.
Yeah,
It's
your
like a
underground.
waterway.
Yeah, it's hard. This is what you'll see
So
in the
like
ground.
down a beach area that's newer, and it has
This
the
is what.
underground.
Yep, this is what you'd have.
Yeah, and like the whole hill up here, I can't remember the name of the road that goes up. Pretty steep road that goes up on this hill up
Pacific
here.
Heights.
Pacific Heights,
Yeah.
yeah, that whole development, all of it is all with that.
Yep. And this is what it actually looks like once you take the jacket off.
Yeah, it's got several layers to
This is
it.
a lot bigger, obviously, but once you take this outside black and red, this is what it looks like underneath.
Yeah,
About the only way in those neighborhoods where it's buried to encounter the line is if they're digging
Yep.
or something. Okay.
yep. Or we end up, go ahead with your question before.
No, or if there's a small quake, I mean, you have a small disturbance.
Yeah, if the ground was to shift or anything. We run into a lot of the transformers for the underground are the green boxes that sit on the ground, and people hit them with their cars all the time. Yeah, which that's a danger too, because
Yep.
the wires, they come up into the bottom. They're all buried, of course. They come up into the bottom of those transformers, and people hit them with their cars, and then it can like slide which this thing's wired in, but it can slide the transformer and shear those wires off. So then the wires could be laying underneath that transformer, exposed and sheared off. We got this little
Yeah.
demonstration is just to give you a heads up for digging. He's not very well grounded.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of times, like once a year, like the bill insert you get with your bill, we'll do a thing on call before you dig. Whether it be just, digging a new post in the backyard, or doing some small excavation. You can call 811 and they'll send a utility crew out, and it's free, and they'll what they call a locate, and they'll look for lines and stuff like that. And they're not just looking for power lines, they're looking for water, for cable and stuff maybe stuff that's been there a long time that people don't even know about. So for a free service, just keep that in mind. It's a real good thing to call to avoid something like that happening.
811?
811, yeah.
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
could
that's
be
like
anywhere.
I believe that's a nationwide number.
So.
Yeah, and we, like, anything that's been, the power lines in the ground that have been dug in, years ago, they're supposed to put the power line down. It's supposed to be the lowest thing below water lines and all that stuff, but,
Doesn't
it's
always
not a
happen
perfect
that way.
world. It's not always that way. It usually is, but then there's also, so they're supposed to be buried, and then with like a foot of dirt on top of them, and then there's a red danger ribbon that's put on top of that. So if you're like digging by hand, you're supposed to hit that danger ribbon first before you actually get to the power line, but a lot of times that stuff wasn't put in, or if it's with those boring machines that they use a lot now, there's no way to do that. So by the time you get to it, you're on a 14,000 volt power line. So getting those locates.
They're all in the same ditch of sorts.
Sometimes.
The water, if it's built in the last
Yeah.
5 years, it's all
Yeah.
in the same trench?
A lot of times, yeah.
Okay,
And like our newer stuff is all in conduit.
okay.
Back in the day, there was a lot of direct buried stuff, so it could be our high voltage
It would have
or
been just like this. Yeah, they used to just take this wire and just bury it in the ground.
It
And
used to be this.
now we at least run it through pipe.
Okay.
and this would be our secondary wire, which is the same as what you'd see overhead, but this is what would be in the ground. And it could also,
Same with that. It used to be just bury it in the
thrown in
ground.
the ditch.
Now at least it's in pipe. But also the older stuff, which is just directly buried, which is, more dangerous basically, it's also not mapped out near as well. Because, it could have been put in the ground 50 years ago and the mapping wasn't near as good as it is now.
I have another question.
Yeah.
We actually had some down power lines in town a few months ago when we had the little tornado in Rockaway. And since it may have been the first tornado we've ever had in Rockaway, there were a lot of people wanting to get out and look at the tornado damage. And our fire department and emergency management did a good job of walling off the area where the power lines were down.
Was that like off of North 3rd?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I was there. Yeah, I came up that night. I was trying to think of the tornado in Rockaway, and I'm like, okay.
It hit somebody who's sitting here, it hit their house,
Oh.
or their yard.
Not my house.
Nothing yet, the yard.
Straight out under the fence.
Yeah, so there were just a lot of lookers because, you know, I mean, like, how often does this happen in
Curiosity.
Rockaway? And so what do you all, I mean, like, how soon do you responded, I think, pretty quickly to that. But, like, what's your procedure for that?
Well, we came in, do you remember what time of night that happened? It was,
She could probably tell you.
9:40 p.m.
Okay.
watching Monday Night Football.
I remember it was at night, and so we probably showed up around 11, I'm guessing, is my guess.
You were there pretty quick.
Yeah, by the time the calls come and they get us and whatever, and then, so they, send a couple guys, and then those couple guys are like, hey, we got, a few more lines on the ground, so they called a few more guys, but we got there, believe we had all the lines back up before it was even daylight. So, which it wasn't a huge,
You had to replace
it wasn't a huge
a
amount of
couple
power.
of utility poles.
Yeah, we had to replace a couple
I saw
poles.
you working in one area,
Yep.
taking the old one out and putting the
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
one in, so.
And it wasn't a huge, as far as the power lines were concerned, it broke a couple poles, and we had some wire on the ground
Yeah.
for a couple of blocks. But yeah, it wasn't, I mean, like I say, I think we had it all back up and going before daylight, so.
We were really fortunate that it did hurt anybody, take out any hat. We were so lucky.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could see where it took, it
Yeah.
blew the doors in
It
on the
did a
school,
lot
and
on
then
the
took a bunch of
school
tin,
buildings.
took the tin
Yeah.
over a block, and,
Yep.
yeah.
One thing you brought up that's kind of a good time to bring that up, you asked about response time and stuff. Just to give you an idea how that works, obviously during the day, we have a dispatcher that's working there, and we all take the calls and stuff. But PUD has somebody on call 24 hours a day sitting by a phone. And that phone, after hours, is at that person's house. And so the reason I'm telling you this is a lot of times during a big storm, we encourage people to call so they know. But for that first 15 minutes or half hour, sometimes people will call and it rings and rings and rings. Well, the reason that is doing that is because that person is already dispatching our linemen to go out there, and so they obviously can't.
A lot of phone calls coming on.
A lot of phone calls coming on.
Phone calls need to be made.
So know that there is somebody that, and if they're not answering, it is because they're already dispatching. The other thing is if we have a big incident or a storm where there's a big outage, we'll activate our emergency incident command team, and we'll send a team right to PUD, stay there all night if we have to, and we have multiple people come in answering phones. Joanna, as you guys have probably seen, keeps up on the social media, and Nixel.
You guys do a great job.
And just trying to keep people informed, but we do like people to know that there is somebody there answering all the time. So.
When you send Nixel alerts to everybody, they can sign up for that.
Yep.
Yep. Sign up for Nixel.
Now, how fast does the outage map on the TPUD website show up, actually show outage areas?
As soon as the dispatcher enters the address in and it starts searching out the meters and pinging them through, it comes right onto that map.
Okay, so it's almost
Yeah,
instantaneous.
as soon as they get it entered into the system. But like Landon said, they're answering the phones, they're dispatching, so sometimes
Lot
they
of stuff
can't get it
going
in right away.
Right.
But
There's
when
not
they,
hours, it's.
no,
Oh,
it's
no.
as soon as they can get it in, then it shows up on, and that map refreshes every 5 minutes
Yeah.
on the website
Yeah, it's
with
great.
information.
Yeah, I've had times where weekends or whatever, my phone rings and it's our dispatcher saying, hey, we got an outage in Barview or whatever. I walk in the house and say, hey, I got to go to work, and my wife will be like, yeah, you're going to Barview? 'Cause, I mean, she's getting the Nixel before I even know where I'm going. Yeah, they're pretty quick with it.
That's awesome. I think it's
Yeah.
gotten better over the years too. Don't you think after being here a while, that every time there's an outage, you guys respond quicker and
Mhm.
it's back up quicker and quicker, and we don't
Yep.
have
days of
I know.
outages like we used to.
That's the goal.
I know on the north end, we struggle
Wow.
with PP&L's transmission line, and that's been an ongoing thing for years. It's super frustrating for us because, for one, we have our own outages, and then all of a sudden, so we kind of know what's going on. We can see what our stuff is doing by the outages, and then it all goes black, and then we don't know where we need to go because it's just, it's frustrating.
Well, it is interesting. Rockaway Beach gets very few outages unless it's the transmission line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when our power goes out, I pretty much immediately assume there's a problem with the transmission line.
Yeah.
And that's not 100%, but in
Pretty often.
experiencing it, we just don't have a lot of power outages in, because I get the Nixles, and you have problem areas out there that have repeat outages. But we're pretty fortunate here with the infrastructure, I think.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll bring up while we're talking about this is how we restore power. So, if there's a big outage, I know it's frustrating for people sometimes. They'll see like PUD here, they're working on it, and they get this street lit up, and everybody has it, about 2 people over here, and then they get in their trucks and they leave, and they go somewhere else, and they're like, why didn't... So, number one in restoration for us is safety. We're going to do everything we can to make the area safe before we do it. But we also are going to restore in order the most people that we can in a single, if we can go somewhere and in an hour we can have 1,500 customers back on, and we know that a side street might take 6 hours to repair and we're only going to gain 10 customers there, we're going to go to the biggest first. So I know it can be frustrating if you're the one on that side of the street, but just know that's what we're doing. We're trying to get the most customers on as fast as we can.
Yeah, and the like you were saying with today, the response, just everything has been quicker. Like, I don't know if you've seen inside of our the new control room or whatever you call it, it's the office, but I mean, there's basically a computer monitor like the size of that back wall that has our whole system on it, and it's got stuff blinks here and there, and those dispatchers in there are reading that and looking at it constantly, and it's amazing what the technology has done over the years. I mean, each individual meter is sending messages to that. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me.
That reminds me, a couple of years ago, I live in a duplex here in town, and a couple of years ago in the middle of the day, someone from PUD knocked on my door and said there was a problem with my meter, and they were going to shut my electricity off and it needed to be replaced immediately or there could be a fire. And I had zero idea that there was a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the computer picked that up or something?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
I can see.
We have people in the office that their full-time job is to monitor those meters, and they send a funky signal to them, and they'll call one of us and say, hey, you need to go look at this. Which years ago it would have just, nobody knew until it got bad enough and just burned something up or broke a connection, and then you're out of power, so you call, and then we come out and look. But today they can actually, and the meters are super sensitive, they can see problems as they're starting to be a problem, and we can get there and fix it before you really even know that you have an issue. It's, like I say, it's amazing.
I got a question. How is in these power outages, where's our power coming from? Is it all from the north, or do we have an option to get some of our power from south of us?
It comes, we have a main feeder that comes into Tillamook. And it splits, it comes to Garibaldi. Everything up here is fed from up north down their transmission line as far south as Garibaldi, basically. But we can feed Garibaldi from Tillamook, and we can do it through our distribution line, which we've run into this before too, like talking to them, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have our line up and going in 2 or 3 hours. For us to do all the switching and everything to feed it through the distribution from Tillamook to the north end is like 6 hours of switching, which also generally we have we have wire on the ground or whatever too. So just the switching itself takes about 6 hours-ish. And if they tell us that it's gonna be up in 3 or 4 hours, then we're like, all right, we'll go with that plan. And because then once we get it switched over, then we still have wire on the ground and all that stuff to pick up and fix. and then we're another 6 hours switching it back to normal. So it's quite a process to get it fed from not the normal feed to feed up here. It takes quite a bit. It can be done, but it takes a bit.
Do you know why the feed goes down so much more and takes so much longer? I mean, is there a reason
The best I
behind
know
it?
is just kind of underfunding, and the
Okay.
maintenance has got a
I
little
didn't know if it's
behind, and
old or.
It's old.
A lot of
Old
it
line,
is
trees.
a remote country that it's in too.
Sure.
So if the power goes out at 11 o'clock at night and it's blowing 80 miles an hour,
Nobody's coming.
and well, they'll be out looking, but those lines come over some very severe remote country that some of you have to walk into. The other thing that we deal with, we do a lot of pre-maintenance, trying to, on our tree trimming and stuff, but you only have so much of a right-of-way, and living on the coast, we have these huge trees. So these trees can be clear of the right-of-way, but they're tall enough that they'll come off private property, and we have no control over that.
Right.
And so a lot of times what you'll see is, there'll be a tree down, and the right-of-way was cleared, trimmed and everything, but it's came off of private property, and just, it's kind of part of living here, I guess. But I would say the biggest thing in response time to that is just the remote area.
Yeah, and it's hard finding guys sometimes for them.
So I have a question about the fire, oh, sorry, I can't see behind me, sorry.
It's 3 quick things. Rubber boots are a myth, right? If somebody thinks, oh, I've got rubber boots on, I can approach. That's a myth.
No.
That's a myth.
I grew up on a
That's
dairy, and I
a
wore
myth,
rubber boots
yes.
all the time, and that electric fence would still get me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and second and 3, please. Distance. Again, we're emergency responders, just volunteering until the real guys get here. Distance that you can advise in different situations.
If you can stay back 40 to 50 feet,
Yeah.
is at least that if you can.
Okay. And last is, please, we have so many creeks here. Electricity runs through water, and we're all above ground, so if something falls, what advice for consciousness of, I mean, we don't want to stick our finger in a creek, but we know that, I mean, right here at Salt Air Creek, there's the green transformer right there at Salt Air Creek, where there's a big convergence that then goes under 101 to, under the trestle to the Pacific. So, can you?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose the water could be energized. I mean,
I would say if there's a
Potentially.
question, just avoid it.
Yeah.
If there's anything in your mind that tells you that might be, heated up for some reason, just avoid it. Because like he was saying, even with the 40 or 50 feet, there are so many variable factors in that, like he was talking about earlier, is the ground wet, is the ground dry? So again, just side on caution and avoid it.
Okay, because we might door knock or something, right, Chief, if we need to try to go around neighborhoods to protect zone by zone. So it could be possible if something looks compromised to don't go, and can it go through the water pipe? No.
the water
No.
pipe.
No, because they're not connected.
Well, it
Okay,
depends
never
on what
mind.
kind of, I mean, like, so older houses, they used to use the water pipes in the houses for their neutral, for the system neutral in the house. So a water pipe is a perfect, it's the older ones. The plastic ones these days, not so much, but the old copper water pipe, it's essentially a copper power line.
We've got lots of.
Good conductor.
Yeah, a lot of the old houses, they actually clipped into the water lines because they were copper, so they used them for a neutral on the house.
So my question was about the fire truck, because if they need to use the ladder, and I'm sure Chief Hesse's worked with this a lot, and they need to go to a house that's on fire and the wires or the electric lines are close by and they need to get the ladder up, do you all just come out and shut off the electricity in that area so they can get the ladder up, or what happens?
We have before. It's
Yeah.
not real common, but yeah, if the fire department calls and they say that they need, a line shut down, we absolutely will kill that line for them to so they can do their work, yeah.
Yeah, most of the time, the safety is up, but we can lift and watch where the lines are. That's one of our safety tips that we do. And then we ask for them if we need to de-energize the house or the area, whatever, to make it safe. And they'll always respond.
So during normal business hours, our crews can be anywhere in the county, but we try to, or we always have, a north serviceman, so someone up in Bayside Gardens, and we have a south serviceman down by Hebo, and then usually always a crew and a serviceman in town. And part of the reason for that is so we have someone close for emergencies, and those guys are really quick to respond. So a lot of times at the request of fire departments, the 911 dispatcher will call PUD directly, and so it really helps having those guys spread out so someone can get there as soon as they can. Because there's times where these guys can't do anything until the power's off. So
Yeah, and we have right now basically 2.5 crews. So 2 heavy crews and then basically a half a crew, and we could be anywhere, like Landon's saying, anywhere in the county. But bigger projects will all work together, so we could have all of our crews like working on something in Escalon, and it's happened plenty of times. It's scheduled things, whatever. We have a bunch of work to do. We'll all get together and we're all working on that. And then of course something happens in Manzanita, but we always have that guy that there's always one person staying up north. There's always at least one person in Tillamook, and there's always at least one person in the South County. So there's always somebody somewhat close to get there, no matter what we have going on. Yeah, and then we have, all the dead spots around here, like up the Wilson River. As soon as you get up the canyon, there's no service, but we've got pretty good radios in all of our trucks that we don't really have any dead spots with our radios, so we're always able to communicate. Yeah, trying to think. I guess back to these pad mount transformers. They're just the same as an overhead transformer, only on the ground, same voltage in there. And we run a fairly high voltage, 14,000 volts per phase. So 25,000 volts with all 3 of them combined.
Maybe talk about when people hear a big explosion.
The big, the transformer blowing, which it can happen. It's very rare that a transformer actually blows up. What you're actually hearing is, this is a fuse, which you can go out, we could walk out on the street and just find any transformer, which this little board doesn't really represent it, but a transformer has, before it's connected to the main line, there's this fuse that sits up here like this, actually. This tail is not hanging. Anyhow, the way this works, there's a spring in it, and it sits in a insulator. It's insulated on both sides, and all the electricity is going through. It's on the inside of this tube. It's basically through this wire that's connected from the top to the bottom. And the big explosion, what everybody says is a transformer blowing up, is actually this fuse. The way that they're an expulsion fuse, and when they see an overcurrent or a fault, they basically blow up inside. But this tube keeps it contained, but it is extremely loud. It's like 3 shotguns going off at the same time. It's wicked loud, and you hear it for blocks, if not miles, if the wind's right. And that's the big boom that you hear, is just this little fuse, and the fuse inside blows, and the way it's designed with the spring and everything, the fuse blows, and then that thing falls like that. And then as we're driving, we can be driving by at 50 miles an hour and see that thing hanging like that, and you're like, oh, there's our problem. So yeah, and these have been around for a long time, and you can go anywhere in the States and find them. You can go to other countries and find them. Still have different styles, but the same concept. But basically, it's a way for us to be flying down the road looking for a problem, and you see that hanging upside down.
Good visual.
It's pretty easy to see.
So what's the difference between that blowing and a transformer? Is there a difference in the boom or what you might see?
I've never heard a transformer blow. I've only seen two. In 17 years, I've pulled up on two transformers that were actually like the top blown off and actually blown up.
Do they catch fire occasionally, or is there a problem?
It can.
Can.
Yeah.
So we had one go the other day, Saturday.
Yep, Saturday night.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the question I had was the community safety. They were asking about the contents of the transformer that was spread through the ground and
Yep, there's 15 gallons of oil in them, and generally, I mean, there's bigger ones, smaller ones.
Depending on size.
Yep, but yeah, and the second one that I came across was in a lightning thing probably 3 weeks ago, we had some lightning out on Cape Mears, and it literally blew up an overhead transformer, blew the top off, blew the bottom off, and the ground for 100 feet around was covered in oil and whatever. I don't know if there was a fire with it or not, no idea. Didn't look like anything was burned up, but I forget what I was even getting at. As far as the fire, there can be, I've seen videos, they've set up, demonstrations to on purpose blow up the transformer, and the oil caught fire and there was a big fire.
Those calls, and our job then is just to keep the public awake till these guys arrive.
Yeah, generally the pole fires that we go to are like the secondaries are maybe overloaded, and they get hot, and then they'll start like melting this is a normal secondary wire going to a house. And if they're overloaded or there's a bad connection or what, I mean, there's several reasons why they can overheat, but then it'll start melting the insulation, and then sometimes it can catch fire. And if it happens, I mean, I've seen it happen up by the pole, catch the pole on fire, but it's rare, but it can happen.
And didn't the old transformers have toxic oil in them?
They did.
Used to have.
So you have to be
Yeah.
careful, 'cause you
PCB
can't tell
oil.
which one's old and new.
Everything that we have, 100% of our system is
Safe.
Has it changed it? Yeah.
it's all been changed out, and that was PCBs, which, boy, what does that stand for?
It's a good
Like
question.
we got
Can't remember.
Polycarbonate something, I forget, it's a big long word, I haven't heard it for a long time, but it's PCBs. And they were toxic or hazardous or cancer causing or something, but nothing. Actually, every transformer in our system has a label on it that it is PCB free.
Non-PCB.
And even with that being a lot safer step, we still have guys that are trained and they respond to if there is a leak. They are very rare, but if something did like that happen, we have guys that come out, there's a very strict protocol they go through, and they make sure that everything's clean and safe, and then that all has to be reported and recorded and everything. And it's just an extra precaution because, like I said, they did used to be like that.
Yeah, and even, with the safe oil that we have now, we still come up and we'll scrape, dig up all the dirt that has any oil in it and haul it off and take care of it.
So I got one more question. And on these foggy summer days when
Yeah.
the insulator
Yeah.
is arcing, we get multiple calls
Yeah.
of arcing power lines.
Yep.
Which
That is a phenomenon that happens along the beaches, and we see it terribly in Oceanside, Rockaway, Garibaldi a little bit, Manzanita, all the beach towns. And what it is essentially is, like I say, we run a pretty high voltage, which is wanting to basically get back to its source even more than a lower voltage. But the worst time that I've seen it is like end of summer, coming into fall. So it's been essentially dry all summer, or for a few months, pretty dry, but you still get all the salt breeze off of the ocean, and salt is pretty conductive. So power lines, the insulators, the transformers, the cross arms, everything gets a thin coating of that salt, conductive salt on it. And it's dry enough that it just sits there most of the time and you don't really notice it. And then actually if we get a good hard rain right off the bat, it seems to rinse it off pretty good. You don't notice it too bad, but if you go for a few months or a couple of months with that fog or that salt on there, and then a fog comes in and just wets it a little bit, not enough to rinse it off, but just gets it wet, we call it tracking, but it's basically the electricity trying to get down that pole to ground, and it lights up the whole pole. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I used to have some really good videos that I don't have anymore of some of that stuff up close, and I thought it was pretty neat. But I'd like to say it's harmless. I wouldn't come up and be grabbing onto a pole in that situation, but we've never had any accidents or any problems from it, and generally it only lasts for just a little while. You're not going to see it so much in the daytime. It could be doing it in the daytime, but you're not really going to see it. But you see it at night, and usually, with our weather, sooner rather than later, it's going to rain, and the rain just rinses all that stuff off, and it's back to being fine.
One other thing I'll mention real quick, I talked a little bit about like the preventative maintenance and stuff we do to try to avoid outages. Like anything, no matter how much you try, there are some times where it's just unavoidable and it's going to happen. And so we try to encourage people, especially if you depend on electricity for like a medical reason or something like that, to be prepared, especially in the wintertime when those seem to happen more. Maybe a generator, something like that. Check on your neighbors that have that, because a lot of times, we'll get a call. It's like, hey, we don't have electricity, and I need this oxygen thing going, and there's really nothing we can do with that because we can only get it on so fast. So just being prepared. But with that, if you are going to install a generator, make sure it's professionally installed, because there can be some really bad repercussions from that. And I'll let Ryan explain what a little tiny generator can do.
Yeah, so normally, as you think, electricity comes from the top, goes down through your transformer, transforms to a lower voltage to your house, but it also works just the same in reverse. So if your house, it can potentially backfeed a transformer coming in at 120, 240, and then coming out of the top of the transformer on these high bushings at 14,000 volts. And then it can heat up the power lines that we are potentially on or fixing. So it definitely poses a threat. But if you have like it professionally installed, you normally have a transfer switch, and it'll do that by itself, so it won't backfeed.
Yeah, an electrician will put a switch in your panel to where you can't. There's no physical way for the generator to backfeed the transformer.
One of the things that we're recommending from emergency preparedness are these battery generators. It's actually a big block of batteries. If you plug your 110 items in it, like your health equipment, and it's going to continue to run for hours, and there's no gasoline, no exhaust. It sits in the house itself to run the refrigerator.
Yeah, and as long as you're not plugging that into your house.
Don't go to the house, just the individual items. Just put an extension cord into it.
Yeah.
That's super important awareness. My daughter designs and installs commercial solar arrays, hundreds of acres. And so when I first moved here, she talked about check in about solar and stuff like that. And y'all said right away, if anybody does anything like that, you must be notified, at least to have an awareness. And it's critical, exactly what you said. It's dangerous if people try to do it on their own.
Yeah, it's just, I remember when I was going through the schooling and I realized, or I was taught that, so inside of a transformer is just copper coils and a core and coils around it, and it's all how they're wound for different voltages or whatever, which none of that means anything. The thing that blew my mind was there's no moving parts in there. There's nothing doing anything. It's just sitting there doing nothing. It just needs to have 14,000 volts come in the top of it, and the way that the coils are wound and whatever from the manufacturer, it puts out the 120 volts that you want to plug your toaster into. But if you take a generator, a tiny little Honda generator, and you plug it into the wall and you're putting the 120 volts that would run your toaster, it goes right out through the same lines and into the transformer on the low side, and it's kicking out 14,000 volts, which is hooked to the power line, that 10 miles away
Mm-hmm.
is still 14,000 volts from your little generator at your house. It's just mind blowing
Yeah.
to me. Yeah, and
Yeah, it works just the same in reverse
yep.
as it does.
And I guess that takes like all of the storms and stuff when we are working on the power lines. Like our day-to-day stuff, we try to keep them energized as much as we can. I mean, so we work on the energized power lines and we have all these tools. This is a representation of one of our hot sticks that we use on the bucket, and we do all kinds of stuff with the power lines. We're not actually touching them, we're using these insulated sticks. But during a storm, we're actually putting our hands on it and fixing things physically with our hands. But before we do that, we test the line with our high voltage testers, and then we have grounds that we put from each phase to the neutral, which is just we don't touch anything until we get those grounds on it, which those grounds they're there for backfeed, they're there for, like this line that we're working on that's dead and grounded, it can go down and be hooked to another line that's energized, and it's not actually connected, but they're still close. And a car could hit the pole, or a tree could come through a pole a mile away, cause this pole to fall over into energized stuff, but those grounds will protect us from even that. So yeah, we ground everything that we touch. Every time, 100% of the time, that is our biggest thing. We never falter on grounding the line. Anyhow, but it protects us from the backfeed also.
Well, this is a very impressive setup. I think it might have been fun for people to make this model, but it's such a realistic teaching tool that I think any age group you probably go into schools and children can understand this, or adults like us. So thank you for putting this together and coming to work with us.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny to do this for, of course it's a little different for adults and kids, and then you're, like certain, like middle school kids, they're pretty interested into it, and then you get down into the first, second graders, and you'll be talking about don't touch power lines, and a kid will raise their hand and tell you that they like cats.
Yeah.
It can be
Yep. They just
it's
like the
fun.
flash.
It's always good though. Every group that we do this for, it usually somebody gets something out of it. So
Yeah. It's always a good
That's a
refresher.
great presentation.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Answer our questions.
For sure.
yeah, thanks.